Welcome back to Tri Talk. This is the 1830 tournament. This is game A. We'll be playing with Trainee John, who is the tournament winner last year, number one seed. Malcat, Ed Capitan, and JT Kimmel. We'll hop right into the auction. Trainee John's going to be leading us off, and he will be going for the D&H. Malcat is going to jump on the CNA, and Ed Capitan rounds us out with the M&H. So all three privates have bids. And JT Kimmel is going to go in for the Camden and Amboy, so no cheap Camden and Amboy from Malcat. Trainee John, second action will be for the Champlain and St. Lawrence. Would be pretty nice for him if he was able to end up with those two privates. Um, Good value for not too much cost. Malcat is going to prevent that with the D&H bid. Ed Captain actually pulls, and we will be back to Malcat and Trainee John on the D&H, having given Trainee John a face value Champlain and St. Lawrence. Looks like the D&H is going to go up for 105, and this means that Ed Captain actually gets the M&H for face, or $5 over face, leaving JT Kimmel and Malcat to duke it out over the Camden Amboy to avoid the B&O. So that was a pretty good pull from Ed Captain, secured himself the M&H. Well played. We'll see how expensive the Camden Amboy goes. It should go pretty far. Actually, only 230, not too heavy. Melcat probably could have stood to bid that up a little bit more, but now we'll be falling on the B&O, which he pars for max. Ed Captain is first up in stock round one, and looks like he's going to take the C&O, pars it at 76. Does give JT Kimmel the opportunity for a little bit of a higher par here, and should be able to do it with just 5 shares. So that makes the CNA even better value for him. Looks like he'll go up to 71. Trainee John is going to take the NYNH, and the B&O player is just sitting on cash. Should be a pretty quick stock round. We'll see if the B&O player wants to do anything. Looks like they just sat on cash. We'll confirm. He did. We are into operating round one. CNO's first up is heading straight down to Columbus. That's unusual. Going to buy a 2-train PRR heading towards Lancaster, single 2-train NYNH heading towards the B&M, and another 2-train. So 3 trains have been bought, and we'll see if the B&O floats here or if Malcat wants to go for another company, potentially the B&M. I would, I'm not a fan of it. I don't recommend going for the B&M, but I could see him doing it. I think the B&O would be fine to take. Alternatively, just by paying shares in the CNO. He is going to buy a share in the CNO. Okay. Everybody else should be passing. Trainee John buys 1 share in the PRR. Malcat is going to spread his money around. And this will leave Ed Captain with priority, it looks like. CNO is heading down to Columbus before, as we've seen. We've seen this on the channel before. It doesn't seem to be very good, but we'll see if he's able to make it work. Runs for 50, pays it out, buys a second 2. So this is potentially making it pretty easy for the other players to get their privates bought in, looking at the PRR specifically. Trainee John, or sorry, JT Kimmel getting into Lancaster, doesn't drop the token just yet. Buys a 2, doesn't buy into the 3s for the private. So now Trainee John has that opportunity. And he has the Champlain and St. Lawrence. What else does he have? Also the D&H. So that was the combination we were talking about. He did end up with it. I didn't remember that. We'll see if he buys the 3 to get those privates in. I think he should. He's going to lay Providence, pays it out, and does get in his privates. That's pretty nice. He gets full value, not a lot of money left in the company, so he can sell it down and not leave too vulnerable or too attractive of a target for a takeover. Stock round 3, Ed Captain is first and is going to buy an NYNH. That's probably going to be sold down, but I guess if it's sold down, unlikely to lose much value, so fair enough. JT Kimball, he is buying the NYH as well. Trainee John, he's going to sell down, and they do lose some value. We'll see if they want to take that company or not. Is he going to take the B&M here? He does. Okay. Malcat is passing. Interesting. He has a lot of cash. I'm surprised that he hasn't tried to buy some more shares. I suppose he's worried about a dump. He should be pretty confident that he's going to have priority into the next stock round, though. So I think it would be safe to invest in other people's shares. Trainee John is going to work on floating here. Looks like Malcat is content to sit on his share or his cash. And he does. All right. Slow start for Malcat. B&M is now floated, and Trainee John has 2 companies. B&M first to operate, upgrades Providence, tokens it, Going to snap up 2 3s here. Just one for now, actually. Okay. So a little bit of a less explosive start for his revenue. CNO running 2 2 trains is going to lay the double dit, but doesn't lay the number 2. So the NYNH may want to race down there and try and get into Reading and Allentown. Decent revenue, 90. Could be running for 70 with just the Chicago run. So this Columbus bid is really not paid off for him, I wouldn't say. Buys a 3 and doesn't buy his privates just yet. PRR heading towards Pittsburgh, so not even going to upgrade Lancaster to contest Reading and Allentown. I think if you're the NYNH player, you got to be looking towards that now. Should be, I guess it's not guaranteed yet, but it could be if the PRR takes another turn without upgrading Lancaster. PRR is also going to buy a 3. NYNH upgrading Boston. So I think we're going to see the Providence token here, and he'll run 3 trains. I think I would have liked to see NYC upgrade, but he doesn't have the cash for it. Okay, so PRR was probably aware of that and not on a dirty rush to upgrade Lancaster yet. This will be a pretty good revenue for the NYNH, but he only owns 20% of it, so we'll see if he wants to actually pay it. Token 180, and he does pay it. We're into the second set of the operating round. CNO links up with Pittsburgh. Not going to token it just yet. Runs his 2 trains. Has 3 of them, but just running 2 for 110. B&M. Just a single train. Wasn't able to buy a train out of the NYNH, so not the most efficient. Runs for 100. PRR. Upgrades Lancaster now. And is going to token in Pittsburgh. Okay, CNO is still fine. Should be able to get that Lancaster token. Withholds on the PRR and buys in their private for max. NYNH last operation does start heading towards the Reading and Allentown, but is not going to be able to get there just yet. Was a little too slow. Pays out 200, and we're into stock round 4. If we look at operating order between the PRR and the NYNH, it's going to be a tall order for the PRR to operate after the NYNH. If that were to happen, Training John will be very happy. I don't think he's going to be able to make it happen without help, though. He'd have to sell the PRR down 3 and have nobody sell any NYNH. I don't think it's going to happen. Mowcat, he immediately sells the NYNH. That makes it even harder. So definitely won't be seeing that. And is going to start floating the B&O. Slow start for him, but he's getting off now. Ed is going to buy the PRR. JT is selling the PRR and is going to float the Erie. Trainee is buying his NYNH, so it doesn't look like he's going to make an effort to knock the PRR down at all. B&O still floating. Ed is passing. Erie still floating. Trainee last share for him. Malcat, B&O. Ed Captain's sitting on a lot of cash here. Looks like the other 2 players are going to be content to float their companies. Malcat is going to trash Trainee John's company once before floating his B&O. I don't think that's going to change if he gets a 5 train. I'm just looking at this. You know, the B&O has a big treasury if he buys a bunch of 3s and 4s. I don't think we would see the 5s exhausted before the B&M operates, so I don't really know that this trash has any significance. Erie's now floated. Malcat last to go, and he's going to trash the Erie too, it looks like. All right, so losing priority for this. Going to give Ed priority. And we are into operating round 4. B&O first operation has been blocked at Lancaster. It's going to head down south. Fall even further behind in tempo. Buys a 3. Does he buy a 4? He does. So the 2s will not be running. CNO probably upgrades Pittsburgh for the token in Lancaster here. He does. So good news for both of those players. Should be getting the Reading and Allentown track and run into New York next operating round. Buys a 4. B&M. Does he want a 4? He does. Okay. So his track, not his track, his revenue is going to get better now that he has 2 trains. But he's got not that much money in his companies. Got to worry about the permanent transfer of this player. Only $500 and 2 presidencies. He does have a full market in the NYNH, so at least he can pay and still get train money. Erie, first operation. Looks like he's going to try and get down into Pittsburgh, and the PRR is going to be there to help him out. So, should probably happen unless the CNO wants to be aggressive and token Pittsburgh. He has the token but doesn't have the cash, so we'll probably see the Erie token end up in Pittsburgh here. We do see the fives come out. Okay, wow, that was pretty fast. I didn't think I was going to see that. But Erie buys the poison four, and let's look here who's going to get the next fives. NYNH, no. Maybe with a shuffle, the B&M could do it, and nobody else can. So we're going to have to see the CPR and the NYC float for these trains to be bought, and that's pretty good news for Ed Capitan. He's going to be able to pick up that NYC probably. The CPR suitcase was not laid. So I don't think JT Kimmel's going to have cash to float it. Maybe Trainee John. Unlikely. All right, well, we'll see the NYC float for sure. Reading in Allentown gets laid. Pays. PRR gets the 5, and he's going to shuffle it out of the Erie, actually. PRR is going to have pretty good runs here, so it makes sense to get the train into the better company. NYNH, last company to operate, is going to upgrade NYC and pays for 120. He's going to shuffle a train out of the B&M. Doesn't give the B&M 5 train money. And I don't think the B&M is going to be able to get there with just a withhold with a single 3 train. A little bit surprised we didn't see him shuffle cash into the B&M for that 5. Hopefully he's ready to buy at least one of them. I don't think he can afford to miss out on all the 5s with his little treasury. CNO heading down towards the Gulf, and surprised we're not seeing the Philadelphia upgrade, but I suppose he's confident that the PRR is going to be friendly. Running for 260 and paying it. B&M upgrades Boston. Can't run Boston and New York. Runs for just 120, pays it. B&O. Still not making any progress anywhere important. Just operating down south. 2 trains, but 1 run. He's got a token Washington of all places for the ability to run both trains. That's sad to see. Runs for 150 and is going to pay it. Erie. Heading down towards Pittsburgh. Operating order wasn't quite right for him to get the token in Pittsburgh this turn, but he will next turn, I'm sure. Runs for 50, PRR, 2 trains, gonna lay Philly, and he pays it. NYNH, 5 train money in this company. And did the B&M shuffle a train to give it the money? He did. All right, so I guess he wanted the 5 in the NYNH instead of the B&M. Missing out on a 5 train run by doing it this way, I think. Runs 180, pays it, and we see 2 of the 5 trains bought. NYC should float here and buy the last one, which is gonna, if we look at the player order, put Trainee John in a little bit of trouble when that 6 comes out. But really nobody's in a position to bring out the 6 if nobody floats the CPR. So I think Trainee John's hoping that JT Kimmel doesn't float the CPR, and then they can just both buy Ping shares. In terms of net worth, Trainee John and Ed Capitan are neck and neck, but if Ed Capitan floats the NYC, he's going to put a lot of cash into shares that won't pay, so Trainee John should get a leg up there. However, he will still need a permanent train. Ed is going to buy a PRR, actually. He's not floating the NYC, okay. JT buying the CNO. Let's look at the NYC for a moment. Is it really that bad of a company? I suppose if you are not Trainee John controlling the B&M and the NYNH, it's very likely that you're never going to get a run on that NYC, at least not into anywhere that matters. So Trainee John has kind of locked up the NYC for himself, probably, just by the virtue of having 2 track points in the B&M and the NYNH to the 1 track point in the NYC. So I guess that's good for him. JT is buying the CNO. Trainee, is he going to sell anything to try and float the NYC, or is he just going to buy Payne shares? So he does sell the B&M and the CNO. Looks like he's going to be floating something, and he does take the NYC. That's pretty powerful. That's a lot of good synergy for the 3 companies. They're all going to be able to run through New York. The only liability for him here is that he threw away both of his tokens on Providence, so there's nobody to token Albany with the NYC. So if the Erie gets over to Albany through Rochester or something like that, that is a liability to cut all those companies' runs. Um, but presidencies are map control. He should be, well, he does have one permanent train. This is another permanent train, so he's going to have to scrounge for a permanent train in the B&M. But map control and extra share density with this float, so makes sense. Malcat, he is also selling the B&O. Is he going to float the CPR? He does. So I think that Trainee John is probably not happy about that. I think he was hoping for a little bit of a stall before the 6 came out, and now that this CPR is floating, it's probably not going to happen. Trainee John may try to trash the CPR behind the NYC so he can snag the 5. Not sure. Alternatively, I suppose he could try and delay things by allowing the CPR to operate first, buy a 5, and then not buy a train with the NYC and just shuffle cash, leave the NYC suitcase temporarily. The NYC suitcase is not going to be secure forever, I don't imagine, but he might be able to delay the game a little bit to fortify his position by doing that. It's a possibility. Ed Capitan, ton of cash, is going to be going back for paying shares in the PRR and is actually selling quite heavily out of the C&O. Doesn't have a permanent train, doesn't have cash for one, and is train locked. So looking to withhold, I think, and then distribute his cash elsewhere. JT buying the B&O. Trainee is going for his NYC. Malcat, CPR, yep. Ed Capitan still going for the PRR, almost sold out on that company. So it looks like it'll be a split presidency, 60-40 split. Trainee John still floating, Malcat still floating, Ed Capitan still a ton of cash, and I think he might struggle to invest this cash. Yeah, he's sold out of his C&O, but there's not a whole lot of safe places to put his cash right now. PRR was a good option, but now he's exhausted that. I'm going to go for the Erie for now. Erie is dumpable, and I don't think we'll see it happen, but I suppose it's an option. Looking at priority, it's looking pretty good for Ed Capitan to maintain priority, as long as he doesn't go crazy on shares after the other companies have floated. So maybe he feels safe investing in these other players' companies. JT passing, Trainee almost floated on the NYC, same on the CPR. So Ed might get one more share here, and then he needs to decide whether or not he wants to lose priority. Buying a B&O for now. Trainee's floated, CPR. Looks like Malcat's going to trash the NYC here. He does. Again, I think we've seen this before from this player. I don't think this really changes anything. And it gives Ed Capitan another share that he could potentially buy without losing priority. But he's going to pass to be safe. Trainee is going to buy an NYNH. Malcat is going to do some more trashing. Is he just targeting Trainee John? I don't know. I don't remember what other shares he's trashed, but he's trashing 2 of Trainee John's companies in this OR stock run. Ed Capitan is still passing. Malcat buys the CPR and will be content. We're into operating around 5. C&O's first up and gets the Philly upgrade. Good news for the PRR and the C&O. Going to run both of his trains for 310 and withhold it. And could have bought a 5 here, I'm sure, with that. No, actually couldn't have. His treasury was so low. I was going to say could have, but he was train locked. But even with the withhold, he didn't have enough cash either way. B&O upgrading his home. Somehow has still not made any progress anywhere on the map. Running for just 170 and pays it. B&M, 2 trains. Looks like he may be setting up for a suitcase on the NYC. At least not going to leave it and run into the New York tile, which is aggressive. I don't imagine we're going to see an NYC suitcase. That would be crazy. He would have to get his B&M over here to block it from the Erie eventually. Running for 220 and pays it. Erie is linking up with Pittsburgh. We'll see the tile there, or the token there. C&O got his runs cut. And Erie pays. CPR lays himself track. Gonna buy a train out of the B&O and snag that 5 train. B&O does have 6 train money, so yeah, this is kind of bad news for Trainy John if he was hoping for a stall. 5 train, and then the PRR is up. He's gonna upgrade Lancaster, good runs for him. 340, which he pays. NYNH does get a run for the NYC into New York, so it's just taking a different route than I would have expected. I was kind of anticipating him laying the straight upgrade here and then the gentle curve, but he goes with this odd looking track. I was expecting this, but he managed to get a different track there. I don't know. I don't think that makes much of a difference. The difference being this sharp turn here. Maybe that allows the B&M to run a better D train. Yeah, we'll have to watch that. I'm not sure. Runs for 280 and pays it. NYC first operation. It's not going to lay track. So he is going to do a little bit of a stall here and not obligate himself to buy a third permanent train until somebody forces him to, it looks like. B&O, 4 train with a withhold, probably could get the D upgrade. He's going to run for 170, which is exactly enough, and he pays it. Doesn't want the $800 D upgrade. The D train on the B&O would be lackluster, but it would rust everybody else's 4s, which is usually pretty good, especially because you don't have any 4s. Would put Ed Capitan in a lot of trouble. He'd have to sell quite heavily. So a little bit surprised we don't see the withhold there. Wouldn't bankrupt Ed Capitan, so if you're Malcat, you don't want a bankruptcy when you're in last place. That makes sense, but Ed Capitan wouldn't do that. So I'm a little bit surprised we don't see the withhold here. C&O is going to upgrade Columbus and runs for 230. He's going to withhold. He just missed out on the 6 as a result of the B&O, but his withhold was going to be shy of it anyways. B&M, trainless. He's going to take a train out of the NYC, I'm sure. Yep. Erie, he is upgrading the double O's. Runs for 130 and withholds it. PRR upgrades Pittsburgh and withholds 240. So JT Kimmel's withholding on both companies. CPR laying Ottawa, paying for 60. NYNH, 2 trains, has decent revenue as a result, 280, and he pays it. NYC, surprisingly suitcased, and is going to fall back into yellow. Not the end of the world for Trainee John. He's going to have to buy a train here eventually, but in the meantime, he's paying out. He's got yellow shares, and he's going to be able to buy a bunch of shares in the next stock round because he hasn't been withholding and hasn't had to emergency buy a train. So decent short-term outlook for him, but we do need to watch the track development because eventually he's going to need a D train, and if he doesn't start laying track, he may get tokened out everywhere. B&O, 2 trains for him, and not really that great of runs. 270 pays it, and the C&O is upgrading Columbus again. Made a beeline to Columbus, says he's going to get his money's worth, and upgraded to Brown. Not able to run it actually, but it does look good, I guess. Runs for 230 and withholds it, so it looks like he'll get the D train upgrade, and does. The C&O's D train is pretty poor, and now the Erie is going to need a train. JT Kimmel can shuffle if he wants, but is just kicking the can down the road. If he falls back on the Erie, he's not able actually to dump the PRR. The operating order is just $1 shy of being the right operation where the Erie or where the PRR operates first, but it's not going to work out for him. B&M 6 run is going to be for 190. He's still paying. Erie hoping to get a loop into the double O's with his soon-to-be D train, it looks like. He's going to shuffle a 5 for now, so he has money for the stock round. CPR inching his way into better revenue, paying for 80. PRR trainless, was able to combine cash with the Erie and the PRR treasuries. And he does actually sell for the D train right before the stock round. I thought we were going to see him shuffle twice, but he actually depletes all of his cash, so that's going to be a pretty boring stock round for him. NYNH running his 5 for 190, pays it. NYC still falling back. So if we look at the game state here, Trainee John is ahead by 200 bucks and has the most cash. He has 3 presidencies and yellow shares, but he's got $1,100 that he owes the bank whenever somebody gets around to laying him track. Next closest competitor is Malcat. The CPR is going to be pretty poor in terms of revenue for the foreseeable future. The B&O revenue is decent, but probably is going to not get to buy another share if I had to guess. There's a big advantage to buying the $100 to $126 arbitrage shares, and he's last in priority. So his position's not great. The B&O run is okay, but nothing amazing. And he is second to last in shares, so probably not going to be winning. JT is out as well. It's going to come down to Ed Capitan and Trainee John. Ed Capitan is the PRR and the CNO. He interestingly doesn't have. Actually, he's just this. Does he not have presidency? He does. He has a CNO presidency, just 30% of it. That D run is not good, and I suppose the PRR run is pretty good. So that's going to be how he gets into this game. He is trailing quite heavily in shares, but has no train liability right now. So he needs to make sure that he's able to invest his cash without getting dumped on. And if he's able to invest all of his money, he will probably be able to stay neck and neck with Trainee John because he still owes a train. So I think he needs to make a beeline for the NYC, break this suitcase, and just hope he can avoid a dump. He's going to buy a PRR for now, 50-50 split on that presidency. JT out of cash. Trainee is buying a B&O, okay? He needs to buy everything that he thinks is going to pay so that he can have the other players pay for his D-train in his companies. Malcat does get the B&O, so because JT Kimmel was out of cash, nobody was able to buy those IPO shares before he got one. Ed Capitan buys the last one. JT still passing. Trainee CNO, Malcat CNO. So I think they're going to pressure the CNO presidency. It's not that great. The D run is not amazing. Ed Capitan's going to defend. Looks like the JT player is going to join, and he actually sells the B&O. All right. Is Trainee John going to just pick that up? He is instead going to stick with the CNO. Okay. Am I missing something on the CNO? Does it have a better D run than I'm expecting? I don't see how. It's going to have to lay some pretty expensive track if he wants to lay out of Lancaster. I suppose it's possible. I don't think the Western track is going to develop into anything worthwhile. Does he have cash in the company? He doesn't. So it's going to be a withhold if he wants to get anywhere. All right. Malcat rounds out the CNO. Ed Capitan buying a B&O. That is a little bit of a problem for Trainee John. I think probably the B&O is going to be a better company. It has better share appreciation further right on the market, higher revenue. So losing on those shares is maybe not ideal. JT passing. Trainee buying the Erie. Malcat NYNH. Ed Capitan Erie. Trainee John B&M. Nobody wants any of Trainee John's companies because they're worried he's going to be able to shuffle them around and dump them. Malcat buys one share. Ed Capitan sticking with the Erie. Okay. And Trainee John going for the CPR. Ed Capitan gets up to 40% of the Erie as well. He's now cert locked. Trainee John, he's actually going to sell an NYC and buys an NYNH. Is he going to buy one more share? Looks like he passes. So that leaves Malcat with priority. Just looking at the game state again, Trainee John 3 presidencies, and I guess halfway or a third of the way to a permanent D train, but his routes are not going to be all that amazing. I think the B&M is probably his best D run. Can run through New York into Baltimore or Boston, New Haven, up into Albany, and then see where he gets from there. Okay, some potential. P&O is still not really getting anywhere exciting. Runs for 170. B&M is going to lay that $120 track. It is painful when you're hoping to get a D train to do that, but I think he is setting up for that D run that we just highlighted. So can't fault him for looking ahead. Runs for 200, pays it. CPR heading towards the offboard. Runs for 80. CNO. Not sure where he's getting. Pays for 240. NYNH. Still not laying any track for the NYC. Pays it for 190. PRR. Looks like PRR is going to get a run into the offboard with his D run. I don't think this does anything for the CNO yet. So the PRR is running for 340. Good news for JT and Ed. We're splitting that revenue. Erie completes his loop, so now he's got two of the double O's, running for 210 and paying it. NYC does lay himself track, and interestingly, doesn't give himself a run just yet. Okay. Did he have to orient it in this direction for a reason? The X and the K are both available. So I'm not sure. I guess just wasn't ready to give it a run yet and wants to give it in the next operating round when it has a $30 revenue center, maybe. B&O, just laying more track for the sake of it. Runs for 170. B&M does give the NYC a run, so I think he's finally ready to out of pocket a D here. He's going to run for 220 and pay it. CPR gets into the offboard, now running for 130. CNO, not sure where he's heading, running for 240. NYNH heading over to Rochester. So interesting that the Erie hasn't actually been able to token in Rochester yet. If that's left open and the B&M is able to run a D train into these double O's, that's definitely some good revenue potential. NYNH paying for 210. Erie laying Toledo. So JT Kimmel is potentially helping the CNO out a little bit with track. I don't think that really helps that much though. Yeah, we'll see. I think he's just helping his PRR out is what we're seeing. PRR gets a run into Chicago and is now running for 380, best revenue in the game. NYC is going to be forced to buy a train here. Does he token Rochester? I don't think he has to, and probably, well, let's see. Does the Erie have money for a token? He does not. So probably should not token Rochester here because I think he wants to run the D in the B&M. So he's not going to. Buys the train out of the NYNH. And we are into the last operating round of this set. I expect we're going to be seeing a D train come out for Trainee John. Looks like he's going to be running it in the NYNH, not the B&M. Or he could shuffle again, run the train one more time in the B&M, and then buy the 6 into the NYNH. That may be what we see. B&O, 170 still. B&M linking into the double O. Safe from the token on the Erie, even with a withhold, as long as this doesn't upgrade. So good potential now for the B&M. Pays it for 230. CPR heading down towards Albany potentially. That would be problematic for Trainee John if the CPR gets down there with token money. Paying for 140. CNO doing nothing. NYNH is going to actually buy the D in the NYNH. Okay. And in terms of runs, I suppose the run from the NYNH is only $10 worse, this DIT here, than the B&M, so not a massively consequential decision between those two companies. All right. He has to pay a bunch of money for it and does have enough money into the next stock round that he doesn't need to regret, I guess, paying for the D train here. Erie is going to try and lay a bypass of Cleveland, but Cleveland's already bypassed here. I guess that's a good bypass if you have a D train, but not such a good bypass if you are not running one. So maybe that's what he's looking for to help his Erie out. Looks like it. Runs for 380 on the PRR. First run of the NYC in the game. He is going to, I suppose, try and block the CPR from Albany here. runs for 190, pays it, and we are into stock round 7. So looking at the game state again, Trainee John has fallen quite far behind with that D-Train purchase. Ed Capitan has opened up a $700 lead on him and a $300 lead on Malcat, but I don't think Malcat's really in contention here, just because the CPR is not very good and neither is the B&O. If we look at the spreadsheet and look at the revenues here, Malcat's revenue is higher than I would have expected, and I suppose that's partly due to the B&O's high share appreciation, and even the CPR is not too shabby. So even though the revenue is not great, his share portfolio is doing okay. Let's go back to that here. So Ed Capitan is running for the most, and the other two players, JT Kimmel and Malcat, are neck and neck. Trainee John fell behind, but previous to that was pretty close behind Ed Capitan as well. But I got to say, I think it's looking pretty good for Ed Capitan if he's already running for the most, just because the other players don't have a lot of room for growth here, I don't think, in terms of their revenues. I suppose he's already at his cert limit, and the opponents are not. So he needs to focus on buying these brown shares and hope that the other players don't, so he doesn't start to fall behind in terms of shares. He is already trailing Trainee John, so that's maybe Trainee John's way back into this game. He's got a 5-share advantage. So with 2 operating rounds left, a $700 deficit with 5-share advantage is not insurmountable. Yeah, I think it's too early to call it. We'll have to see what happens. Malcat buying the NYC. Everybody's going to prioritize these brown shares, it looks like. There's really not that many shares left in the game. So I suppose you want to deny them to the leader. But Malcat, for instance, he's not going to really be able to take advantage of the brown shares, I don't think. Because all these shares are going to be bought up before he's able to really exceed his cert limit by very much. Ed Capitan is going to actually sell a B&O. Instead of buying an NYC, he's going to sell to make room in his cert limit. And he sells 3 shares out of the B&O. I guess he was worried about a dump from Malcat. That would be pretty crazy for Malcat to do that, though. And Malcat actually had the opportunity to do it and didn't do it. So is he really worried about that? Instead, going to buy a B&M, so that opens up a bunch of shares for other players to buy, but Malcat can't buy them, so maybe Ed Capitan has identified Malcat as his closest competitor and just wanted to hurt his net worth and sell shares that he can't buy. I guess that's possible. I mean, if you're Malcat and it comes down to you and Ed Capitan, maybe it does make sense for you to dump. You probably wouldn't be able to replace those shares, though, so it would hurt you as well. JT Kimmel buying the NYNH. Trainee John, he is going for the NYC, probably last NYC share for him. Malcat buys the NYC, Ed Capitan buying the B&M, JT Kimmel, NYC. Trainee John actually gets up to 70% of it because Ed Capitan didn't buy a share. Malcat is buying the B&M, and we are running out of shares to buy. It looks like there's 7 left, 1 in the NYNH. Ed Capitan will buy that. JT Kimmel going for the B&O. Trainee John, CPR. Malcat passing, not at his cert limit, so I guess people are worried about dumps. A lot of companies with $0, though. We'll have to look at the entity screen and see who's dumpable at the end of this. JT Kimmel still buying a CPR. Trainee John passing, might have priority here, we'll see. And it looks like it because JT Kimmel's still buying shares. So he's going to buy up everything, it looks like. He does. And that will leave us into the operating round with Trainee John with priority. Let's look at this here. Trainee John with priority is not dumpable. Malcat is invested in the B&M. That is potentially dumpable if Trainee John decided he wanted to. It would be pretty easy too because the NYC already has money. NYC does probably have routes for 2 trains. Has a New York run and then a run into the double O's. So could see that happen if Trainee John wanted to hurt Malcat. Would be hard for him to replace shares, but he's pretty far over his cert limit. So if he just wants to pay and leave yellow, he's going to have to discard shares anyways, and maybe the B&M is how he does it. So we could watch out for that. Ed Capitan, he is invested quite heavily in other players' companies, but he does have priority on JT Kimmel, which is two of those companies, so he's not worried there. And then the CNO is his presidency. He is dumpable on the NYNH and the B&M, but Maucat is going to run interference for him on the B&M, so Trainee John could, in theory, dump the NYNH instead. Both of these companies are dumpable, okay? So both these players are vulnerable. And, these dumps are not far-fetched. I think that this is very reasonable for Trainee John to be considering, especially dumping on Ed Capitan if you're $700 behind in a close game. Having to out-of-pocket an $1,100 train in the last operating round is almost certainly going to knock you out of contention for the win. Last player is JT Kimmel. The B&O is dumpable. Would take a withhold to do it. CPR not dumpable. CNO not dumpable. So Maucat and Ed Capitan are the highest risk, and it's going to come down to whether Trainee John wants to do it or not. B&O, nothing going on. Running for just 170. B&M, I'm not sure what he's doing with that track. Maybe looking to bypass a dit. I don't know. Runs for 230. CPR, heading towards the double O's. We'll see if he gets there before Trainee John is able to get an upgrade. I think an upgrade from Trainee John would take a withhold since he only has $78 there. So maybe won't see this late at all. I don't know if withholding for that is worthwhile. CNO, no track, running for 240. PRR, heading towards the west. He doesn't have cash either, but he can lay a sharp turn on Flint and then get double back into Chicago for an extra $30 on his run. Running for 380, Erie. Looks like that's what he's trying to do. NYNH running a D train. And where is he going with that? Maybe he's looking to get into this track and then head west? Not sure. Running for 290 on the D. NYC. Yeah, it looks like he's heading for this. So we'll need the, I have to remember this number, the number 41 for that. Should be easy to block it if somebody wants to. We'll see if anybody's paying attention. B&O, not laying any track. B&M, he gets half the upgrade. Runs for 230. CPR, going to get the city for an extra $20 on his run. CNO, doing nothing. 240. Erie, gets the double back for the PRR. PRR does not block the NYNH's D train from getting this upgrade. So he's going to be sharing that run with the NYNH, it looks like. He's going to withhold. So that's scary if you're Trainee John, because this guy now has token money. He can token in Albany and cut you off at the knees, or token in Rochester. Okay. Not a whole lot Trainee John can do about that at this point. I guess he would have, yeah, I mean, I don't think he has any money in the NYNH. He would have to withhold on the NYNH and shuffle a train out of the NYC. So fall back on both of these companies to get token money. Oh, I take it back. The NYC has token money, but he really doesn't want to drop it anywhere because that would cut the NYNH's run. Yeah, he's just kind of screwed now. I wasn't expecting this withhold. And I don't know why JT Kimmel's doing it. Cutting Trainee John's run, is that really a priority? I guess he is in contention for first, $500 behind Eddie Capitan and gaining on him. Okay. But JT Kimmel is in last place by a fair margin. Really doesn't seem like he's going to be winning this game. Okay. Well, I think we're going to see the PRR token screw Trainee John over. PRR is going to shuffle a train out of the Erie and doesn't leave himself enough token money. So I guess he's safe for now. Speaking of Trainee John from the token perspective, does the Erie have the opportunity to token him out anywhere? Yes, the Erie can still do it too, so not safe. NYNH gets the upgrade that he was looking for, and his run is going to be up to 420, but I don't think we're going to see that more than once. NYC, he tokens in Rochester, so cuts his own run, and I guess is at least grateful that Albany wasn't tokened. Runs for 210, pays it. B&M, running for 230. B&O, He pays the 120 for this. Surprised he had money for it. I don't think he's going to get anywhere with that. CPR, lays Barry. CNO, nothing doing. Erie did have cash now for the double O, and is he going to token it? He's not going to token it. Just going to shuffle a train. Actually, he's going to buy a second D train. So now the PRR has a D and a 5. Um, I don't think that this is going to get him back in the game. He's got, half the net worth of everybody else now. Um, it's good news for Ad Captain, though. He's invested in the right company. This PRR is going to be running like a monster. Okay. NYNH's run is a lot worse now, just 240. PRR, let's see what he gets up to. It's going to be something ridiculous. 600, yeah. Wow. But still not worth it. That D train he just bought in the Erie is going to run 3 times, and then the game's going to be over. NYC running a 5, pays for 210. And Trainee John is above the cert limit. We were talking about how he might want to dump, and he did set up for it. So the NYC, he cut the NYNH's run, so now he feels like he doesn't want it and can dump it on Ed Captain, and that will lead Trainee John pretty solidly in first place, I think. Yeah, he didn't withhold to stay yellow, so I think we're going to see it. Okay. He does. Nice. Does that just give Trainee John the win? I think it probably should. Um, he's still got a share lead on Ed Captain. Ed Captain now has a train that he's going to have to buy or just shuffle. Um, and the other, I mean, JT Kimmel's so far behind, he's not going to win. Malcat is $800 behind. If we look at the revenue here, I mean, the game state has changed a lot, but he was trailing pretty badly behind Trainee John. So maybe Trainee John's got this? He should. See what happens. He's going to sell CPR, protect himself for a dump, I guess. Not that I think he was really that vulnerable. I think he just had to sell that to get under his cert limit. Malcat has to sell. He also sells a CPR and is going to sell a B&M for the NYC, running 2 trains, reasonable. Ed Capitan is going to buy the B&M that was just sold at his cert limit. JT Kimmel also has to sell. And do we just pass now? Looks like it. All right. We are into the final operating round, and it is neck and neck between Trainee John and Ed Capitan. But Ed Capitan, as noted, has just been dumped on and is either going to have to shuffle and not run his trains anymore or fall on an $1,100 train, which will definitely put him out of contention. I think the saving grace here is that he only owes 40% of this company. So Trainee John has eliminated 6 shares of his portfolio, but Trainee John has 3 shares in those companies as well. So it's only a 3-share loss for Ed Capitan if he just shuffles. Ed Capitan has split the presidency of JT Kimmel's companies, and the PRR is running so heavily that losing 3 shares on Trainee John hurts, but may not be the end of the world. I don't know though. I mean, he's already behind, and now he's trailing Trainee John by 3 shares. Are these PRR shares enough to make up that deficit? We'll have to see. B&M running for 230. And the other factor here is that Trainee John now made the NYC a lot better than what we were used to seeing. He's got 2 trains in it now, so the 210 is going to be much more. And Ed Capitan has no shares in that. So although the PRR is running like a monster, this NYC is no slouch himself. I think that Trainee John should win this. Let's see. B&O still going nowhere. CNO still going nowhere. CPR, not sure where he's heading. Erie, laying more double O's. So does that increase the Erie's run? Hard to tell because he didn't run last time. 380 is not too bad though. PRR running for 600 still. NYNH trainless is going to have to shuffle and does. So Ed Capitan got 1 run, but neither of his companies is going to run for the rest of the game, it looks like. And I think this will be the key moment. What is the NYC's run going to be here? He is heading up to heading up to Barrie instead of heading down to this double O and running into Chicago. Is that because he doesn't want the Erie and the PRR to run up this way? Can the Erie make it that way? Yeah, it definitely can. Can run this way and then back around out. So I think he's probably done the math and realized that because his competitor, Ed Capitan, has 9 shares in these companies, he cannot afford to allow them to link up in these double O's and increase their runs, even though it would also help his NYC. He only has 6 shares in the NYC, and Ed Capitan has 9 in those other 2 companies. So his run is going to be for 440, pretty good. Not 600, obviously. Let's look at the revenue here. Trainee John is running for $100, $150 less than Ed Capitan. Um, and Ed Capitan is now back in the lead, so that's game. Wow. Even with the dump, it's not going to be enough. Well, I guess I have to take that back. Ed Capitan's not going to run either of his companies this time, or the CNO is not going to run again. So that's 2 shares lost. But 2 shares lost that were running for 250 plus, $20 of share revenue. So that would be $65. No, sorry, 50 plus 40, $90 of revenue. That's not enough to eliminate $150 of lead. Yeah, so Ed Capitan's won. Let's just look here. Doesn't look like anything's happening with the track. Ed Capitan actually behind Trainee John now and is only up by like $70. Wow, this is a very close game. I don't think we need to watch the track. Let's just see who wins. Ed Capitan takes it by 60 or $57. Very close game. It looks like eventually the CPR did get a token here. Did that affect the NYC runs? It probably did. The CPR was operating first, and the NYC was running for 460. That has to have been a pretty big deal for the NYC, right? No, I guess not, because the NYC can't run this way and into Chicago, so it probably didn't affect his runs at all. Yeah, it doesn't look like it did. Okay, so at least Trainee John didn't lose the game just because of a random token, but he did lose the game. So number 1 seed is out. That's a big upset. I think this was a very close game. Well played to all the players. Congratulations to Ed Capitan, who will be advancing to the second round. Uh, Only 4 games left in the tournament, so hopefully we'll be starting to see some second round games soon. Thanks for watching. Track Talk will be back.